Something pretty unique is happening in the car industry as of late. Many different massive car companies, Ferrari, Lamborghini, McLaren, General Motors, they're all making these incredibly powerful and incredibly sleek and some, for the most part, incredibly good looking supercars and hypercars. And it's made me it's gathered me enough resources and enough like talking points to make an entire video on it. So today we will be going over the new McLaren W1, the new Ferrari F80, and a pretty actually substantial piece of news for the new Corvette ZR1. And actually, you know what? Let's start with the new Corvette. So I made an entire video about the Corvette ZR1 and how insane and truly just spectacular really the Corvette is. The new Corvette C801 is more insane than prime Tom Platz during his leg day. It's absolutely insane. This over 1,000 horsepower Corvette C8 from factory. So just imagine having 1,000 horsepower underneath your foot, like underneath the pedal that's underneath your foot, just 1,000 horsepower engine that you can just control with a warranty. And people have been speculating the price. People assume it's going to be anywhere from 170 grand to 250 grand. And that's still a pretty good price for 1,000 horsepower. I don't think people who don't understand cars as much as I do will realize just how massive that number is. Just to put it into perspective for someone who's not that familiar with it, 1,000 horsepower is more horsepower than an F1 car has. Now, that doesn't mean the Corvette's faster by any means, but that's just, it's still an insane number. And speaking of speed, speaking of big numbers, the Corvette Z801 was recently tested in a track by General Motors CEO Mark Roos. And if any of my OG car guys are out there watching this video, if you'll remember the last time Mark Roos was behind the wheel of a Corvette, he basically started a race and he exited the pit and he immediately crashed. So it wasn't very pretty, but that's besides the point. The Corvette Z801 has a top speed of 233 miles an hour. 233 miles an hour. That is insane. And these speed tests were done after I made the video about the Corvette C8. So I wasn't able to include this baffling information in that video, unfortunately. But 233 miles an hour is just pure, it's just, there's no other word for it. It's just insane. But that's one of the smaller talking points on today's video. There are two major new cars I'd like to talk about, and cars that will probably revolutionize the Holy Trinity. You know, the McLaren P1, the Ferrari LaFerrari, and the Porsche 918 Spider, all iconic V12 hybrids that make a buttload of horsepower and are arguably the most popular cars in the entire world when it comes to just being recognizable and being responsible for revolutionizing modern car manufacturing today. And the Holy Trinity is one of, if not the biggest reason why we have so many cars looking the way they do today. Now, if you recall, I did say that the Holy Trinity is Ferrari, McLaren, and Porsche. Porsche hasn't made a new, a modern age Holy Trinity contender yet. People are saying, oh, the Porsche Mission X, it's a concept car. Concept cars don't count, okay? They don't count. What does count, however, is Ferrari's and McLaren's new hypercars. They're new successors to what was originally the most popular Ferrari and the most popular McLaren. So let's start with the new McLaren, the McLaren W1. Now, for those who are pretty familiar with McLaren like I am, the McLaren W1, the name at least, immediately strikes a resemblance to the P1 and the F1. Actually, was once the fastest car in the entire world, the fastest street legal car. But the W1 is the third successor in the 1 series by a McLaren. And let me just say one thing. I'm not a big fan of the visuals of this car, the exterior at least. First of all, I'm not a big fan of orange cars. I think orange cars are an inferior color to stuff like blue and black and red and white, maybe even yellow, but I don't know if I really like the look of the W1. But the looks aren't exactly what we're going for, even though McLaren is known for having some incredibly beautiful cars. The McLaren W1 is powered by a 4.0 liter twin turbocharged V8, making 1,258 horsepower, which results in a 0 to 60 mile per hour time in 2.7 seconds. That is insane. That is hypercar numbers. But get this is a real kicker here. The top speed of the McLaren W1, the multi-million-dollar hypercar that is supposedly part of the new modern Holy Trinity, the top speed is 217 miles an hour. So that means that the Corvette C8 which has a little bit less horsepower, but is a fraction of the price, surely, than the McLaren W1, has a higher top speed. I honestly don't know what to say anymore. That's just pure insanity. I don't know what brought GM, General Motors, to make the new Corvette over 1,000 horsepower. I mean, I'm sure as hell glad they did it because that's a badass number and such a badass car to give that power to, but it's just insane. A new Corvette with a fraction of the price that a McLaren would cost makes a little bit less horsepower, admittedly, but it has a higher top speed. Even though top speeds rarely ever matter to the average consumer of these kinds of cars, it is still just incredible. You know what's not so incredible, however? The next hypercar we'll be talking about. I don't even know if you can call it a hypercar because of the engine. So I know I've spoken about the McLaren W1, which is the third successor, the tri-successor, if you may, to the McLaren's 1 Series, the P1, the F1, yada, yada, yada. The Ferrari F80 is next on my hit list, right? It is supposed to be the successor to two cars, the Ferrari LaFerrari and the Ferrari F40, which are two of Ferrari's most iconic cars. Legends. They're legendary cars. People say that when you think of a car, you think of a Ferrari, and the Ferrari you think of either is the LaFerrari, which is part of the Holy Trinity, or the Ferrari F40, both V12 hypercars that can run you up over $5 million, and they're just legendary works of art, beautiful cars inside and out. And if I saw one tomorrow, I would probably need to replace my pants and underwear because they are just legendary pieces of automotive history and machinery. They're perfect cars. And I'm going to be honest, I don't know if the CEO at Ferrari was doing something he shouldn't have been doing when making the F80. I mean, I think he might have been ingesting too much of that carbon dioxide gas, but the new Ferrari F80, it looks like this. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of an older generation Honda Civic with the massive black bar that goes in between the headlights. It looks like a Neanderthal. It looks like a stupid caveman who didn't shave in between his eyebrows. It looks like me after going a week without shaving. You know, it's ugly. Now, admittedly, I will say some of the parts are pretty damn cool, like the wheels and the massive rear end, and also some of the aerodynamic parts and that classic Ferrari candy red. But the front is just not it. But the exterior is the least of our worries. So I'm going to play a quick little clip that I found on TikTok, and I want you to guess what kind of engine is in the new Ferrari F80. Is it a V12? Is it a V8? Or is it something a little bit more sinister? You know, if you can hear what the engine sounds like from that clip, I give all my applause and all my glory to you. But what Ferrari have done with the F80 is they've shoved a 3.0 liter V6 engine into a Ferrari. They took the beautiful Ferrari V12 in both of the cars that were supposed to be the grandfather and then the father to the F80, and they divided the cylinders in half. I have no idea what they are doing. Well, I have a small idea because a lot of Ferrari officials have said, it's supposed to mimic an F1 car because F1 cars have V6 engines, but it is just ridiculous. When you think of Ferrari, you think of V8 or V12, you think of beautiful naturally aspirated or turbocharged engines that make a lovely singing note and they have a beautiful exterior. You don't think of this ugly, modern, soulless V6 engine that's called a hypercar just because it was made by Ferrari and it has a specific horsepower number. Also, after a little bit of research, I do realize that I was wrong about the V6. It took inspiration from the Ferrari's 499P Le Mans car, so that's where the engine takes inspiration from, but regardless, that's not too important. Arguably, the most impressive part about this car is the horsepower number. Now, I did say that this car is a sham of a hypercar, even if it had a million horsepower, but it's the fact that it has 1,200 horsepower that actually kind of impresses me, right? The cars that have V6s, Nissan GTR, or cars of the like, they only have over 800 horsepower if you do a lot of stuff to them. And with all of the modern hypercars coming out, of course, they're all going to be hybrid motors. So the Ferrari F80 has a 3.0 liter V6 engine making 1,200 horsepower but it's a hybrid. And because it's a hybrid, it gets that oomph, it gets that instant torque. So it is able to reach a 0 to 60 mile per hour time in 2.15 seconds. That is really fast. It produces over 2,200 pounds of downforce, which is a massive amount, and its top speed, again, is less than the Corvette C801 at 218 miles an hour. So the Corvette C801 is blowing these guys out of the water if they're in like a long endurance drag race. So I don't know what to think about that. Only 799 units of the Ferrari F80 will be made, and get this, the price of the new Ferrari F80 is $3.9 million. $3.9 million for a V6. Let me put my mic down real quick. $3.9 million for a V6. A V6 that makes 1,200 horsepower. Almost $4 million for a hypercar that makes 1,200 horsepower with a V6. What are they doing? On some smaller news, Porsche is making a new variation of the 911 GT3 RS. Okay, that's cool. But 1,200 horsepower for almost $4 million. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I can't understand. I can't fathom how someone will look at this car and think, oh yeah, I want to buy that car, when you can get a Koenigsegg for like a little over half of $4 million, like $2 million, and you get like 1,600 horsepower with a beautiful screaming turbocharged V8 and so much better looking interior and exterior for a little bit over half the price of $4 million. It's insane. Ferrari are basically scamming people. You know, and you, of course, you know that people who want to buy this Ferrari F80, if you're stupid enough and have that much money, are going to have to own like 6 trillion different Ferraris, because Ferrari is notably very stingy for their Ferrari ownership. They have a weird legal system where there's 2 things, actually. One, if you modify your car, your Ferrari, and you post it on the internet, they will send you a lawsuit and a cease and desist. That's kind of weird. If you buy the car, you own it. It's kind of like Ubisoft and how, you know, like you're paying for a digital license to the game and then yada, yada, yada. But the second thing they do is they pull a classic car manufacturer dealership type thing where you have to own a certain amount of cars in a certain specific lineup of their previous inventory to actually purchase the newest and greatest model. But there's nothing great about the Ferrari F80. First of all, the F80 reminds me of a BMW. Like if I think of F80, I think of the M3. Right? The M3 F80 is a great car, but the Ferrari F80 is a $4 million car for a V6. That's just insane. Ferrari is turning into the Alienware of cars, which makes me very upset to say, because Ferrari is one of my favorite car brands. But regardless, I'm done geeking out for now. I am very fortunate that I was able to record back to back, like day by day. I will say that I have a lot of homework and a lot of tests coming up, so I don't know how my upload schedule is going to look in the next week and a half, maybe even 2 weeks, but I'll try and keep you guys updated with some cool news, and I'll try and use my nerd language to give you guys some funny moments, maybe. I don't know. But I'm more than blessed to be able to sit in my room and record for you guys, because I love doing this. It is a great way to talk to someone, a thing, about what I truly enjoy, and I hope I get to do this for the rest of my life, because I really do enjoy talking about things like this. I love talking about cars. I love talking in general, if you haven't already figured that out. So this is it. The new Ferrari F80 is mid, new W1 is mid, Corvette C801 is badass, because every single Corvette ever made is badass. And yeah, I guess stay tuned for more car news and stay safe.